Welcome back to Franchise Player, and today we're going to be checking out 5 more great games that are stuck on the PS3. And the PS3 seems to have almost countless amazing games and franchises that are stuck on the system. It's a real shame that Sony has not either remastered some of these games and brought them onto, the PS4 and PS5, or just created, an entire new game for these franchises. But first up, we're jumping into an amazing game, and unfortunately one of these has not been made since, and that is Twisted Metal for the PS3. So Twisted Metal was a massive success during the PS1 era. That's when this series had really peaked, in my opinion. There was even a PSP game of Twisted Metal, and Twisted Metal was awesome vehicular combat, and it had a real nice kind of dark edge to it. It was real fun. It was a great game to play, split screen back in the day. One of my earliest memories with Twisted Metal, I was probably 3 or 4 years old, and one of my older cousins was playing it on PS1, and I don't know, I was kind of scared, man. The game looked crazy, and I don't know, when you're a kid, and your cousins or older siblings or whatever are playing a game, definitely seems, I don't know, just scarier for some reason. Yeah, Twisted Metal released back in February of 2012, so this game is well over a decade old now, and for whatever reason, the franchise has remained dormant. But when this game came out, it got a 76 on Metacritic, which I think is a pretty solid rating. I think the game is still super enjoyable. The vehicles are great. I like the weapons, the characters. It doesn't have like that same flair from the PS1 era. I don't know, just I like the aesthetic better of the Twisted Metal games on PS1, but Twisted Metal on PS3 is a solid game nonetheless, and is a pretty cheap game. You can get this game, pretty much all day for around 10 to 15 bucks, and I think 10 to 15 bucks for a fun vehicular combat game on PS3 is totally worth it. And I think it would be really cool if PlayStation had actually brought the Twisted Metal series back, especially on PS5. A Twisted Metal game, a brand new game, I don't even care if it's a remaster at this point, on PS5 I think would be incredible with the graphics, ray tracing, the effects and damage on vehicles, the weapons. I think it would be awesome. But yeah, this game is stuck on PS3, and we can just keep our fingers crossed as PlayStation fans that we'll eventually see a new Twisted Metal game. But yeah, 10 to 15 bucks for this, no brainer, dude. Definitely a pickup, a must-have if you don't already have it in your collection. All right, so number 2 here that we're gonna be checking out is actually a PS3 launch title, and that is Genji, Days of the Blade. So yeah, this game came out all the way back in November of 2006, a launch title right alongside the PS3, and this game did not review too well. It actually got a 55 on Metacritic, so a lot of people, at the time were not huge fans of the game due to, I guess, fixed camera angles and whatnot during certain combat sequences. Overall, I think the graphics of this game have held up pretty well considering it's almost, 2 decades old? Genji Days of the Blade, yeah, that's actually wild to say, but this game is almost 20 years old, and I think it still looks pretty good considering it was a launch title. And this is a pretty affordable game if you're looking to get it physically. This is a game that goes for anywhere between, I'd say 5 to 10 bucks. Some eBay sold listings had it in that ballpark. Most people, I guess, liked the previous game in this series, which was on PS2. I've never played that one, but if you're wanting to jump into this series, that's probably the one to start with, and then maybe make your way to the PS3. Because like I said, the game is pretty affordable. Usually whenever I go to a local game store or I'm out and about, I've seen copies and they're usually pretty cheap. I would say this game is probably the worst rated of the bunch on the list, but hey, nonetheless, it's a launch title on the PS3, and I think graphically it's held up pretty well, and the combat and gameplay is decent. Next up here, we actually have a huge franchise from PlayStation, which has been dormant since the PS4 days, and you're probably already guessing what it is, but that is going to be Killzone, and specifically Killzone 2 and 3 are stuck on the PS3, but we're going to be talking about Killzone 2. And Killzone 2 came out all the way back in, February of 2009, and that was almost 5 years after the original release of the original Killzone on the PS2. At that point in time, I think PlayStation fans were pretty hungry for a new Killzone game, and this one totally delivered. And this game was pretty much universally loved. It got a 91 on Metacritic. Pretty much any review you watch, even from back in the day in 2009 or that 2010 era, this game was definitely getting, positive feedback. People loved the graphics. I think the graphics of Killzone 2 still hold up really well, even to this day in 2024. Not quite as good as Killzone 3, but I'll have Killzone 3 in a future episode of this. But Killzone 2, awesome game, pretty solid story. I think at the time, this was probably the best first-person shooter that you could get on the PS3, if you're not including third-party games or multi-platform games. This was, Sony really trying to show off what the PS3 could do with graphics in that first-person shooter space. What was kind of unfortunate is the official servers were shut down for Killzone 2 and Killzone 3 in March of 2018. So the official servers have been down for a while, but the good news is if you have an itch to play this game, you can jump on through a private server and have a good time. Jump on with some of your boys. If you guys are looking to, relive some nostalgia, some childhood or teenage memories, and jump on and play some Killzone. And if you've never played it, it might be cool to jump on a private server and play it too. This game is under 10 bucks all day, and it's a real shame that this is stuck on PS3. I'm really surprised that they haven't done an HD collection or like a modern re-release of the trilogy of 1 through 3. So yeah, Killzone 2, definitely a must-have, and a shame that it's stuck on PS3. Next up here, we have a game from a series that actually really did not start to take off here in the West until around 2016. And I'm gonna be talking about Yakuza Dead Souls. So Yakuza Dead Souls came out all the way back in March of 2012. So another game here that is well over a decade old, and it did not review so well at the time. It actually got a 64 on Metacritic, which is pretty rough for a Yakuza game in my opinion, but I think part of the reason why this game did not review so well, if you're putting just gameplay and story aside, would be Yakuza was not nearly as popular back then as it is now. The Yakuza franchise now, I'd argue, is more popular than ever. And the game that really had kind of spurred that for Yakuza was Yakuza 0, which really made it more popular here in the US and other areas outside of Japan. So this was well before Yakuza 0 came out. And it was actually a kind of a spin-off or side game. This game is all about zombies in Japan, and you're having to kill zombies. So it's not your traditional Yakuza game that you're probably used to if you've played 3, 4, 5, or even some of the newer titles. A complaint that a lot of people have about Yakuza Dead Souls is the frame rate really seems to drag and dip when there's a lot of action on screen. So whether that's a combat sequence, fires, explosions, whatever, I guess the frame rate actually takes a pretty decent dip, which at the end of the day, yeah, it can be annoying when certain games chug along, but a game like Yakuza, I could definitely see it being annoying, especially with all the combat, and especially in a game like this where you're going to be shooting zombies and there's going to be hordes of them, right? So yeah, it probably does get a little annoying, but I definitely think nowadays people get a little too caught up in frame rates. It's not the end all be all in my opinion. If you're a physical collector, this game is hella expensive. This game goes for anywhere, I'd say, between 85 to 100 bucks. So this game is not cheap. It's definitely one of the pricier PS3 exclusives that is trapped on the system. And it's a game I want to pick up physically, but if you don't want to drop that kind of bread on a physical PS3 game, luckily you can go on the PS3 store and still pick this up for 20 bucks. So if you're not opposed to having this game digitally, hop on the PS3 store, load your account up with some funds and buy it. It's literally $19.99. And I think this is a Yakuza game that we probably won't ever see a remaster of. I would be shocked if this game was ever ported to any other systems. So I have a feeling this game will actually forever be trapped on PS3. Hopefully I'm wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised. And last but not least here, we have a famous PlayStation franchise that has been abandoned for also about a decade, which really sucks, and that is Sly Cooper Thieves in Time. So if you've been around, if you're a PlayStation fan, you know that the Sly Cooper series was awesome. In the early 2000s, 1 through 3 were pretty much must-haves. If you were a kid with a PS2, I mean, the Sly Cooper series was incredible. Luckily, you can play those on an HD collection, but Sly Cooper Thieves in Time was technically the 4th Sly Cooper game, and it released in February of 2013. So this game is not technically trapped only on PS3 because it's on Vita as well. This was actually one of the few titles that PlayStation had done the cross-buy feature with. So if you bought it on PS3, you had it on Vita, and vice versa. And if you had a cloud save, let's say you were out on the road, you could pick that save up on your Vita. So That was a cool feature that PlayStation had at the time when they were still at least kind of trying with the Vita, was cross-buy. But this game got, I'd say, solid enough ratings. It got a 75 on Metacritic, which is not an insane rating by any means, but 75 solid, especially if you're a diehard PlayStation fan. This being a cross-buy title, I think they were definitely trying to get it in the hands of more people and really trying to advertise the whole cloud save and taking games on the go. But there wasn't a ton of cross-buy titles, unfortunately, but this was one of them. So with that 75 rating that it got, I guess a lot of complaints that people had about this time. Mind you, I don't really have any complaints about the game. I've only played it on Vita. I've never played it on PS3. I don't own it physically. But some complaints that people had were, I guess, that the game felt a little dated to some, and that the gameplay and level design had not really evolved since the PS2 days. And I definitely could see how at the time maybe that was a valid argument or knock on the game, but at the end of the day, dude, when I'm playing a Sly Cooper game, I want it to be Sly Cooper. I'm not looking for them to reinvent the wheel. I actually like that the gameplay and just overall feel of the game is pretty similar, and the fact that you were able to play it on Vita was, a selling point for me. So yeah, Sly Cooper Thieves in Time, I would say if you're a Sly Cooper fan, it's a must-have or a must-play. But if you're kind of on the fence, maybe wait to get a good deal on it. But this is another game that is not going to cost you an arm and a leg. So yeah, that was part 2 of the series I'm doing of games that are stuck on the PS3. And the PS3 is a special console. It's my favorite console of all time. By far, I'd say, at least for home consoles. And there's a ton of great games that are stuck on it. A ton of IPs and franchises that for whatever reason, PlayStation has not chose to make a new entry in the series or remaster it for whatever reason. So I definitely think there's a good reason to still have a PS3, especially for some of these games that are trapped on it, along with all the great multi-platform games. But let me know some of your favorite games that are stuck on PS3 still. I know there's a fair amount of them out there that I still haven't named or played, and even if they're physical or digital only, drop them. I'm curious to see what you think or recommend. But yeah, that'll do it for today's video. Hope you liked it. Always love making PS3 content, and as usual, appreciate you for watching, and we'll catch you soon with another video.